Hi there, Felipe here. Welcome back to the Reuse City Lab. I'm posting this video today as the second fragment, and fragments are these shorter videos. They end up not being so short, but shorter videos in which I try to contextualize where my research comes from and what are the stages of research that I did prior to organizing the Reuse City Lab. So today I'm talking about design research and in what extent that is part of what I did in the past and how that has informed me in my current efforts. If you are watching this video and you have no idea what I'm talking about, I am a PhD researcher at the Northumbria University, and I am conducting an open or an online co-design lab during the month of April 2021, in which I am inviting people to help discuss and advance ideas and experiment about the reuse of second-hand goods and materials, particularly in cities and in regions. Oh, just one second. And my research is part of the Open Dot project that is called the Open Design of Trusted Things, which is a cooperation between Northumbria University and Mozilla Foundation. And it is funded by the EU Commission, the Horizon 2020 program. I have started my PhD on 2019. Sorry, I am mistaking languages now. But yeah, I have started in July, and I am supposed to be done by June 2022. So my particular research topic is smart cities, and I decided to explore environment and social issues as well as sovereignty and collective agency in smart city contexts. And as you can see in the other video I posted in this series, I have decided to focus on waste, but rather than focusing on waste management, I am hoping to discuss and to advance ideas on waste prevention by promoting the reuse of second-hand goods and materials in cities and regions through practices of repair, upcycling, and recirculation. And this, at this stage of my research, I have invited people to join this discussion. So throughout the month of April, I have set up this lab in which we are discussing ideas and experimenting, and hopefully we will end up prototyping solutions or at least reflections about those issues. The first year of the project, of Open Dot project, was focused on design research. We had two excellent training modules offered by partners of the project, namely Standby and Quicksand, which are companies who specialize on design research. And we were exposed to that and had the opportunity to experiment a bit. So my first take on design research was to map what kinds of behaviors people have in relation to things that they don't want anymore. So this was a very quick exercise I did with students at the University of Dundee, which later on would inform other phases of research. And then I, again, with the participation of some students as a quick exercise and also my own experience in the city, I started to document, or to at least to not necessarily document, but to do this quick mapping exercise of shops or businesses or community centers or different kinds of non-profit organizations that were somehow related to the reuse of materials. I'm not sure whether I had by that time already decided to focus on waste prevention. I think no, but I was already interested in practices of repair and upcycling and maintenance of goods and service and of goods and other kinds of objects. And that what was informed the creation of two design research studies that I performed in my first year while I was still living in Dundee. The first of them was the repair journey, and the second was an attempt to do an ecosystem mapping related to the reuse of materials. I just describe a bit of what those exercises were and what were some of those conclusions that I had by performing them. So the repair journey, as I adapted to COVID times, it ended up being an exercise in which I recruited people who were supposed to pick an object that they wanted to either repair or to transform or to make it usable again on their places, because we were under lockdown in Scotland by then. It was in between April and May last year, 2020. And I asked those people to try to repair those objects and to document in a journal what their process was, what were the findings, what were the challenges they had, and the impressions that they had during the process of trying to repair something. There were very interesting discussions ensued by that exercise. So throughout a period of what was supposed to be 2 weeks, but it ended up being 3 weeks, I was just sending prompts to people and getting their feedback on how the process went, and I would try to drive their attention to one specific subject on those emails, and they brought to me very valuable feedback, and in some cases very interesting diaries that we would call the repair diaries. So these are some of the outcomes. You can see the video. Sorry, you can see the slides for this presentation in the notes on this video, and they will be also documented on the repository that I set up to accompany the lab, the Reuse City Lab. So these are some of the outcomes of that discussion. So there was a discussion about value, whether the object in question was an object that was deemed as low end, that was not worth repairing, or if it was a high-end product or object that was expensive, and everything that was in between, in some things that, depending on how much effort you must put or how much money you need to spend into repairing, it may be worth repairing or not. So the discussion, I guess, by then was focused a lot on repairing. There were some exercises into repurposing or upcycling, but then I think the focus of the discussion by then was still a lot more concerned with repairing. Oops, sorry, just jumped to the wrong slide. Then there was also a discussion about the process of repairing, what would be the typical process of repairing, the steps. So these are discussions that came from feedback from those participants. I had, if I'm not mistaken, there were 7 participants, and we had a collective meeting with some of them, and then I had particular discussions with others, and a couple of them only replied by email. Then there was, some interesting questions about how do you identify what the problem is, and then some notes about the joys of repairing and how do you reward repairing. And then another part was a discussion about the social value of repair reuse. It's not necessarily related to the economic or even to the kind of utilitarian or instrumental value of repairing, but there was this understanding that there are aspects of social value that are related to repairing and reusing. Then this discussion about repairing and reusing in private spaces against repairing and reusing in the city or in the community. And I think that's also something that I brought later to the ecosystem mapping, which I will discuss in a moment. And some of the outcomes or the questions that I found with the participants and with their feedback about the exercise, the repair journey, they were very valuable and arguably very potent questions with a lot of potential. So how do we treat more objects as we do treat a cherished book? How to connect the practical skills of craft, repair, and making, how to identify the problem of one specific broken object. So all of these questions I would later bring to other parts of my research. Then on to the ecosystem mapping, and I may say, or I must say, that it's not an in-depth ecosystem mapping as the ones that I know some people, even some of the participants that have signed up for the Reuse City Lab have done in their own projects. But it was an attempt to understand what kinds of organizations and what possible flows exist in different kinds of objects in urban contexts. I was really focused on urban contexts. I was everything. When I started creating these exercises, my intention was to focus specifically on Dundee, but then I had to adapt and change it to a wider scenario, so I would interview people from different parts of the United Kingdom. But the idea was this, to identify what were the kinds of, or the types of objects and materials, and what was their typical flow, and how they would relate, and how would they connect different kinds of organizations or groups in the cities. So some of the, again, these are very extensive notes. So I had one participant which was a data scientist working with identifying waste flows all across the UK, basically in London, but also in other parts of the UK, and how do things circulate from household collection to material recovery facilities, and then sometimes either to recycling or sent abroad. So there are very interesting insights coming from that kind of study that this data scientist does. Then I have interviewed a person who has a kind of design shop that mixes digital fabrication with antiquary, with second-hand objects and custom projects. And it was a very fruitful discussion. It's a person that I have known for years, and I had the glad opportunity to discuss these issues that are totally based on that person's experience, and it was very interesting to see how having a shop in a high street shop in a city in the UK informs some other discussions that I could not have access if I was just reading about reuse and waste collection. So it was a very interesting discussion as well with that person. Then another participant was a person who runs a scrap shop that mostly gets excess materials from the industry, but receives particular private donations, and has this shop that is open to anyone in the city that joins. It works as a sort of club. You have to be a member, But then you can buy this, you can buy all sorts of materials for your own projects. And they have also been exploring ways to transform some of those objects into educational kits and artistic kits. And it's a very creative setting. And I was also happy to get to know their work and how they relate also to different kinds of movements, for instance, zero waste movements. And then I had the opportunity to interview a person who has a buyback or second-hand shop that is akin in a similar, but not necessarily exactly the same, but is akin to a pawn shop. And so what they do in that shop is they allow people to bring their objects and get money for those objects, but the person has 30 days to return there and buy back for almost the same price, I guess, for a very small discount. And but they end up selling a lot of things that people don't return to collect after 30 days. And so that person had a very interesting experience of having also this shop in a busy area in Scotland. Actually, they had 3 or 4 shops over time. Some of them were closed. But it was also a view from someone who runs a business that is totally related to secondhand and has this very hands-on experience on evaluating what something is worth and whether something will be desired by customers or not. And finally, I have interviewed a person involved who works for the Zero Waste Scotland initiative and has direct knowledge of many loads of organizations all over Scotland that are working locally to reduce the amount of waste that is being sent to recycling. And it was also a very interesting conversation we had, and I had the opportunity to learn about some specific configurations that in some cases are connected to institutional scenarios, but at some points is also connected. They are also connected to geographic conditions, and I think I have even one example here. So the takeaways from the ecosystem mapping, I have organized them into 6 areas, and I think when we try to adopt this systems perspective about how materials get reused in urban contexts, it is important to try to include all of these aspects. One of them is connect. The second is urban presence. Then a systems approach itself, change, and how that has to do with behavior and education and niceness, as one of the persons said. And this is also here the point about geographic conditions. In Scotland, people who live on islands or in rural areas have to be resourceful, so they cannot rely on buying or having access to spare parts, and things have to be maintained for as long as possible. Then another aspect was data on zero waste and repair and reuse. And finally, the importance, and this is something that I always bring back in more recent discussions, the importance of stories and curation and presentation when it comes to making the best use out of secondhand goods or materials. Then, based on all of those discussions that I had the opportunity to have and all of those takeaways from these 2 exercises, I started to organize in the sense of conceptualizing, to create ideas that could relate, that could inform design in later stages. So one of the things that I did was to identify different areas coming from the repair journeys, basically different areas of action, different areas where action could be performed. It could be related to the citizen or the household. It could be related to education or behavior. And finally, it could relate somehow to city and community. And actually, some of these notes come from the repair journeys. Some of them come from the interviews for the ecosystem mapping. Then this was an attempt at creating a map of what would be on the left here, different kinds of sources and producers and different kinds of materials. And here on the right side, how to discuss reuse and material transformation in urban contexts. Then I decided to focus, or to at least organize and analyze in four different target groups. I don't like the word target, but it could be, 4 different audiences for reuse initiatives. The first one would be a citizen, so the individual or a household who has things that are broken or unwanted for any reason. Then the community, groups or organizations willing to generate income for community members, or volunteer groups or non-profits in charge of repair cafes, clothes swaps, and other zero-waste projects. A third one would be the professional reuse, so social enterprises or small businesses who have repair people working to repair stuff or reuse materials. And finally, how that would relate to the local authority, be that the city council, local government, or regional government that would look into environmental and economic benefits of encouraging the reuse of materials. Sorry, I forgot to mention the first scale or the first audience here would also include, in the citizens, the individual or household who is interested in acquiring affordable and reliable used things. Based on that, I started to brainstorm what would be design ideas that could relate to those different audiences. So, some early, very draft ideas of, a website or application, or donate bin and a municipal lost and found service. Some of these, so these are my early ideas, which later would inform the creation of 8 design concepts that made into my reports of the first year of research. I have organized them into 3 categories. The first would be what I call web or app or database, and it has the universal registry of things, point and reuse, and save this thing. The second category would be visibility, of making waste visible instead of hiding it, and data on reuse. And the third would be ways in which we can create interactions between the city and reuse. So it would be the reuse bin, transformation lab, and the reuse commons. I will not describe those concepts right now. You can have a look at my website, my research blog. There is a specific page for that. And I will record another video describing all of those concepts. But if you jump to the website right now, there is a first description of all of them. Actually, there are specific videos about all of those concepts in that page. But I think I will record another video now of my current perspective and my current description of what those concepts are. So thanks again for the audience. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you at the Reuse City Co-Design Lab. Make sure to sign up or at least subscribe to receive updates by hopping to the website at make.reuse.city, or follow the project on Twitter or other social media. Thanks. Talk more soon. Bye.